So to continue with the lands issue, the docket 272, which of course is under the Act of 1817, for those that were deemed having title to the land under the land grant, receive residual payments for approximately 14 years for damages to the lands from the Creek Wars. Those IIM accounts set up under the protection of the Secretary of the Interior that were minor children, where in January 30th, 1985, the Eastern Area Bureau Director would have authorized that anyone that is part of the Eastern Creek group of descendants at federal recognition, their funds would go directly to the tribe, which would have created the tribal trust funds. However, as an adult, you wouldn't have received your docket 272 payment because it would have gone to the tribe. But as a minor child tribal member, it would have gone into trust under the protections of the Secretary. The distribution plan from June 30th supposedly was for anyone that was a tribal member that wanted to receive payment had to remove their name from the roll. I never saw that as a child. I was never informed of that as an adult when I received my first adult per capita check when I turned 18. Now, the Oklahoma BIA, who maintained these IIM accounts initially, contacted me when I turned 18 to make sure that they had the appropriate address for me. And when the woman contacted me, she told me, she said, well, you may want to go ahead and close out your account after receiving this payment because we don't expect any more monies to be coming through the account. Well, I told her, I said, well, if you have the authority to do that, why are you asking me to do it? And she said, well, by law, I have to tell you, only you and the secretary have the authority to do that. Well, it didn't set right with me. Excuse me. It didn't set right with me because I knew that the tribe was saying that I didn't have enough blood quantum to be a member. And it didn't sound right. Nothing about her asking me to close my account sounded right. And I said, okay, well, why would, she said, well, you need to go to your tribe. You need to ask your tribe. And I said, well, what am I asking my tribe? My tribe says I don't have enough blood quantum to be a member. And she said, well, okay, everything else is supposed to be coming from your tribe, so I guess you need to go to your tribe. And I told her, I said, well, this account is the only thing that ties me to my heritage. So no, if the secretary hasn't ordered it closed, then no, you keep it open. Well, according to the Cobell settlement, only one minor IIM account was found still open, and of course, that was mine. Right here. Supervised accounts by region. Eastern region. One account open. Here, let's go a little bit larger. One account left open. Percent 5%. And the amount was $974.98 remaining in the account, or in the account at the time that this was looked at. I never received $974.98. I only received 200 and some odd dollars whenever I turned 18. If there were more monies that had gone through my account, I never received them. Nobody in my family received them. So who got them? And that was a question that I had asked the historical accounts director with OST, who got those monies. Well, I still have yet to receive anything. I said, I want to know who had authorization to even touch my account. And if these were tribal trust funds accounts for supervised, under supervised accounts, the OST, Rob Kraft, said that the account was under supervision because I was the one who kept it open. Well, yeah, because only myself and the secretary have the authority to close it, and it was created as a supervised account for a minor tribal member. Okay, so all the other children, like my sister, when she turned 18, they didn't tell her to close out her account. They didn't ask her to close out her account. They just did it. And there was no secretarial order to do it. So all the other minor children tribal members across the board who are on the 1979 roll that are not on the roll today, they didn't give authorization to close the account. And according to how these IIM accounts for minor children tribal member were supposed to have been handled, we were all supposed to have had a social worker. The social worker was supposed to submit us to a test to determine if we were capable of handling our own affairs. That test was never administered to no one, to anyone across the board. Not to me, not to my sister, not to any of my cousins that I know that had that IIM account for Docket 272. I don't know. I know for a fact that no one during the Cobell settlement should have had an open IIM account. Everybody by then would have reached the age of 18 from the date that the application ceased to be taken by the Bureau, and that was in 1985. Okay, so there was supposed to have been a meeting, and the fiduciary trust officer was supposed to have gone in and sat down with Porch to discuss the beneficiaries who were found to be recipients of both historical and trust administration class. I was sent in. I was told to ask not only by OST but by Kilpatrick and Townsend, Bill Doris, to ask, where is my IRA? When I went into the tribe, went before the council, both public and private session. In public session, I asked a question, with the sweep of EPA regulations, what are my rights and responsibilities as the title holder to the reservation? I was kept on the books for quite some time, and then after maybe 2 or 3 meetings, I was taken off the books. When I noticed that my name was taken off of the meeting list for unfinished business, I went back to the council. Here's where I was put on the books. Public comments response. They never gave me a response. Never. They just kept me on the books. See here, this July 3rd, 2014, and June 19th, I was there, and there was no answers. Well, I finally went back up there and I said, well, I never received an answer to my question. And they said, well, we couldn't find any records of you, so you must not be a tribal member. You don't deserve an answer. And I said, whoa. They wouldn't put it in writing. I asked them, I said, put that in writing. And they said, no. So I never got it in writing. There was never any confirmation. So Brian Ross, fiduciary trust officer, back in 2014, tells me, get one of the council members to put it in writing that they want to know why Jocelyn is coming asking where her IRA is. Well, in private session, that's what I asked. Where's my IRA? Stephanie Bryan, sat there and looked dumbfounded. Attorney General Lori Stinson responded with, well, we can't find any documents of you, so, I don't understand what your question is. And I said, the IRA, rights of way, rents, leases, land resource profits, mineral rights, whatever's collected taxes, whatever's collected off of the property. And they left, and then they came back. And then there was a statement that was handed to me by the chief financial officer, or representative of the chief financial officer. And I want to say it was David Gaiman that actually came to me with the paper to show me, and he said that that I wasn't on the roll, that I wasn't a tribal member. Well, the only way that I wouldn't be a tribal member today is if somebody inside the tribe had marked me as dead as a minor child. Because the only people that were supposed to have been taken off the base roll is written here. Children. It's written here under corrections. And here's the Federal Register of Corrections. To the creation of the Eastern Creek 1968 updated roll, which added that added the docket 272 shares. And in this correction, which was omitted in a FOIA request by the Eastern Region Director's Office, Becky Smith, when she was filling the FOIA request for all the documentations, this was the only document that was not sent to me. And as you see here, it says this document is to correct an omission in the notice of preparation of a roll of Eastern Creek descendants that appeared in the Federal Register June 12, 1984, which is one day after it was published in the Federal Register that the Porch Band of Creek Indians, that was deemed successor entity for the distribution of the Judgment Fund Distribution Act, in dockets 21, 275, and 272, where it says that under the heading of supplementary information, the action of the Secretary would follow to bring current the Eastern Creek Indian descendant payroll prepared under the Act of September 21st, 1968, would have included under paragraph 3, not only deleting the names of the 1968 enrollees who were deceased as of January 25th, 1984. I'm not dead. I didn't die before January 25th, 1984. And deleting the names of persons who were enrolled as members of the Creek Nation of Oklahoma. I'm not a member of the Oklahoma Creek Nation because my docket 272 directly connects me to the Act of 1817, which is under the land grant. So this became effective. The judgment plan prepared pursuant to the Judgment Fund Distribution Act, effective January 25th, 1984, which that Judgment Plan Distribution Act was able to be altered by the tribe, since we were deemed a tribe before the distribution of it. And the alternative distribution plan from, was it January 30th, 1984? February 30th, 1984. It did not allow for the minor children to be removed from the roll. Only those people who elected to. And my father did not elect me to be removed from the roll. There was no application to remove me from the roll so that I could be paid. That was under the discretion of the Secretary of the Interior. And obviously, there was no order to close my account, so therefore, I'm still a member of the tribe. And here, once again, first through meetings and conversations with trust beneficiaries, it was determined that the list Interior provided was incomplete. Ultimately, class counsel, after requesting additional information from the Interior, determined there were over 12,600 historical accounting class members who were left off the Interior's list. Second, once again, after discussion with trust beneficiaries, class counsel and Garden City Group determined there had been an error in Interior's trust land records, as beneficiaries entitled to a payment were not scheduled to receive it. After bringing it to the attention of the Interior, it was discovered that there existed a significant error in existing land records, which affected the eligibility of thousands of potential trust administration class members. Third, Interior had divided the list of class members between those that were living and those that were deceased. However, through the present date, Class Counsel and Garden City Group have determined that 26,880 of those class members, Interior listed as alive, had in fact passed away, and 1,313 of those class members listed as deceased were very much alive. In fairness to Interior, a number of these individuals had not been trust beneficiaries for some time, and there would have been no reason for it to have kept up with their status. And yes, there would have been reason for the Interior to have kept up with the trust account minor tribal members' status, because under the Constitution that was proposed, which I'd already gone over, the tribal council was never approved the authority to distribute any of the tribal trust funds to any of the tribal members. Back in 1983, after the original two rolls had gone in during federal recognition, the 1979 base roll and the 1982 supposed to be current per capita roll. Oh, come on. Eddie Tullis started removing people from the roll himself without having the authority to do so, without telling the Secretary of Interior that he was doing it. This is where everybody was marked as dead inside the tribe. In 1983, he started sending out disenrollment letters without informing the Secretary. The Secretary is the one who created our roll. Right here, where it's talking about, and this is in the Federal Register that's omitted by the Bureau in the FOIA request. Oh my God. As it is stated here, the judgment plan, January 25th, 1984, the descendant payment roll prepared pursuant to the Act of September 21st, 1968, because more than one roll was prepared under the Act of September 21st, 1968. As a matter of clarification and supplementary information, the roll being updated is the descendant payroll of persons designated as Eastern Creek, who were eligible to share in the distribution of judgment funds in Docket 21. The descendant payment roll being updated does not include those Creek descendants eligible to share in the Docket 21 who established eligibility solely through the ancestor who was a member of the Creek Nation of Oklahoma. The intent is to bring the Eastern Creek Indian descendant payroll prepared under the Act of September 21st, 1968, for purpose of distributing the judgment fund appropriated to the Eastern Creek Indian descendant group under the judgment plan effective January 25th, 1984, which that would have been Docket 272, for everybody who applied and received approval. However, this also includes all of those that were found with the IIM accounts that were tribal members on the 1979 base roll. Nobody would have been removed from that base roll had they, you had to have been dead to be removed from it. So if you're updating the 1968 roll, the only way that you could have been removed, right here we go, under Docket 275, under a judgment plan effective June 15, 1978, they were all required to file a Docket 272 in order to be added to the 1968 roll. They couldn't, the Docket 275 wasn't even used because there was no genealogy attached to it. So it should be emphasized that persons who shared in distribution of the Eastern Creek portion of judgment funds awarded the Creek Nation of Indians in the Indian Claims Commission Docket 275 under a judgment plan effective June 15, 1978 are required to file or have filed on their behalf application forms to establish eligibility to share in the distribution of judgment funds under the judgment plan effective January 25, 1984. If their names did not appear on the 1968 roll. That is, the roll prepared pursuant to the September 21st, 1968. Although there are some adults who, for whatever reasons, were not enrolled under the Act of September 21st, 1968, but who were enrolled under the judgment plan effective June 15th, 1978. Individuals may believe that their names, their children's names, because they shared in the payment of Docket 275, they thought that their children's names were added to the roll, and they weren't. So they had to file claim under docket 272. Even somebody who had a docket 21, their name wasn't even added to the roll. Why? Why? Because they weren't in Eastern Creek. If their name was not on the original September 21st, 1968 roll, it was because they were not in Eastern Creek. And if they had a docket 275, their name wouldn't have been added to the roll either, because genealogy wouldn't have added up. In order for your name to have been placed on the 1968 roll, which was used to determine the 1979 base roll for the tribe, which was created by the secretary, and the distribution process, because only those who received the docket 275 went into trust as minor children under the protections of the secretary if they were tribal members. Any child that was not a tribal member, their payment went to their parent or guardian, distributed under the Act of January 24th, 1985. Totally different act of payment used for the distribution of the Judgment Fund Distribution Act. I don't, of course I can't see it. Let's see here. Per capita payments and trust fund. This looks like, I'm not sure exactly where this comes from, but a document, obviously historical, with historical context to it. Surveys, interviews, data analysis. I have no idea where it's coming from. However, per capita distribution payment and trust fund. A common way that gaming revenue are distributed is through per capita payments. Per capita or distribution payments are equal payments that a tribe will give to its enrolled tribal members. The amount and time of distribution varies according to the tribe. Most tribes will allow children to receive payments until they're 18. However, some tribes give payments to parents, and others place the payments in a trust fund. Trust funds are the way to hold money, usually per capita payments, until an individual reaches a certain age. The trust fund is a wonderful and horrible thing. This statement represents many tribes have regarding the per capita and trust fund forms of distribution. All of the tribal representatives agreed that a disadvantage of the per capita distribution payment is that it is hard to keep students interested in graduating from high school once they turn 18, because they start receiving per capita payments. They are also concerned that per capita payments could create a dangerous dependency on the tribe. For example, with per capita payments, an elderly income has increased so that they are not considered low income and not eligible for Medicare or food stamps. Their dependency is switched from the state and federal government to the tribe, making them more vulnerable to any economic changes within the tribe. A disadvantage of a trust fund is that when tribal members turn 21, they may have a large trust fund, and instead of attending college, may spend all their money on frivolous purchases. Some of the interviewers felt that the trust fund has actually worked against improving the education of tribal members. It's hard for them to understand the importance of education. They just think they are going to get the distribution check for the rest of their life, and they don't understand that it's just extra. This is not for you to live on. It could be gone tomorrow. Which brings me to Public Law 98-500. Maybe. I don't know if this is it or not. Nope. Nope. Hold. Okay, so under Public Law 98-500, October 19th, 1984, an act to compensate heirs of deceased Indians for improper payments from trust estates to states or political subdivisions thereof as reimbursement for old age assistance received by descendants during their lifetime. Sorry, I'm not dead, and if someone marked me as dead inside the tribe as an original Alati first generation, then someone inside the tribe is receiving my descendant payments for old age assistance, and my children are definitely not receiving anything. So any of those payments that have been reimbursed to the tribe for anything or sent in to the tribal trust fund regarding my account, have I ever had a probate? No. Why? Because of the deception of how the lands went into trust for the second time. Those lands went into trust during Fred's probate. We did not sell the lands. We sold the dower interest to the remaining heirs. The sale papers were not at a public outcry. So the dower interest is what the lower court shows was actually sold to the remaining heirs. Lonnie couldn't have sold anything because he couldn't sign for everybody. My grandfather never signed anything. And to be honest, my grandmother specifically stated that my grandfather never received a penny. And my grandfather was still paying taxes on the property, apparently, in 1975 before he died. Let's pull up his obituary. Let's go. When those lands went into trust, I'm going to get out of the pictures. Everything's going so slow. When my grandfather passed away in 1975, he never had a probate. He never had a probate in BIA. His death certificate was never even submitted because my aunt couldn't find it in time. In 1985, in 1975, oh, this is just too much. Okay, so Mr. Walker was a native of Atmore, Alabama, resided in Pensacola for almost for the past 28 years. He was an employee of the Georgia Transport, Inc. Survivors include his widow, Miss Earlene G. Walker of Pensacola, 2 daughters, Miss Joyce J. Vaughn, Miss Hilda E. Godwin, both of Pensacola, 4 sons, Charles Ray Gibson, James Edward Walker Jr., Dwayne Walker, all of Pensacola, and Wilford Walker of Antigua, Wisconsin. 6 sisters, Ruby Jackson, Gladys Thomas, Ruth Carroll, all of Pensacola, Gertrude Rowland, Tracy McGee, both of Atmore, and Valley Sullivan of St. Cloud, Florida. 3 brothers, Lonnie Walker, Lawrence Walker, W.D. Walker, all of Pensacola, and 7 grandchildren, which I am one of those 7. And these 7 grandchildren would have had the docket 272 by this time. We were all on the original roll. We were born into the tribe and never allowed to be removed. Anyway, if I have missed anything, I will make another recording. Thank you so much for listening.